You know the moment. That payment machine swivels around and there they are, the options. 18%, 20%, 25%, custom tip, or that dreaded no tip button. It's a split second that can feel filled with pressure and just, well, awkwardness. Today, we're diving deep into this whole tipping debate and asking the big question, have we finally hit a breaking point?
Okay, let's start with a story that I think a lot of us can relate to. This is from a university student, Ran Alva. He's at a U-Pick berry farm. He did the work himself, and he still gets prompted for a tip. His reaction really just captures that modern confusion perfectly, right? Who exactly am I tipping here, and why?
And look, this feeling is not just you, it's not just a few people. According to a recent survey, a whopping 90% of Canadians feel that tipping expectations have just gotten way too high. That's basically everybody. It's a huge majority feeling the pressure. In fact, this feeling has become so common, it actually has a name: tip fatigue. It's that sense of just being worn out by the constant requests for more money, turning something that was supposed to be a nice gesture into a source of stress and anxiety.
And when you look at the numbers, they really paint a clear picture of what's going on from the customer side. Over half of us are just confused about when we're even supposed to tip anymore. A massive 63% feel uncomfortable with those digital screens, and nearly half of us are flat out experiencing that tip fatigue.
So, this brings us to the million-dollar question, doesn't it? If pretty much all of us are feeling confused, uncomfortable, or just tired of the whole thing, why do we almost always end up tapping one of those buttons anyway? What's going on there? Well, when you dig into the psychology of it, the answer's pretty fascinating. It turns out the number one reason we tip isn't actually to say thank you for great service. Nope. It's because it's a social norm. We do it because we feel like we have to. And right behind that, we do it to avoid feeling guilty.
This quote from another student, Aditi Roy, just hits the nail on the head. It's that internal battle, right? Your brain says this is ridiculous, but that powerful social pressure, that feeling of guilt if you don't conform, it's a really strong motivator.
So, with all this customer frustration bubbling up, it's not going unnoticed. And that's the key here. This collective feeling is starting to force a real shift, making some businesses completely rethink how they operate. Let's look at a case study. This is a restaurant called Spicy Pro Hot Pot. The owner, Ronnie Yao, was dealing with rising costs and a tough economy, but he started noticing something interesting about how his customers were behaving at checkout. He called it tip hesitation. You know that little pause when the machine is in front of you? He saw that happening more and more. And he had this key insight. If tipping feels like a burden to people, how is that helping me bring more customers in the door? It might actually be hurting. So, he did something pretty bold. He got on social media and announced his restaurant was going completely no tipping. And, this is the important part, he did it without jacking up his menu prices. And the result? It totally worked. Yao said he saw a significant increase in business right after he made the change. It's like customers were voting with their wallets, choosing the place that took the guesswork and the guilt out of the equation. And this move by a single restaurant is really just one small part of a much, much bigger cultural debate we're having right now about a practice that's been around for literally centuries. I mean, tipping has a really long history. It started way back in 16th century England as a way to ensure promptitude. But as you can see, the expected amount has just been on a steady climb ever since, from about 10% in the late 1800s to the 15, 20, even 25% options we see today. And that brings us to the heart of the argument today. You've got one side saying, hey, tipping gives customers control and encourages great service. But the other side argues that it creates huge pay gaps between the kitchen and the servers and, as we've already seen, has just become a source of guilt and confusion for everybody. And you have to remember, for the workers, the stakes here are incredibly high. As this former waitress, Millie Squires, explains, many places have a tip-out system based on total sales. That means if a table doesn't tip, the server could literally end up paying out of their own pocket to cover that table. They can actually lose money. Okay, so with customers being fed up, businesses experimenting, and employees caught in the middle, what's next? What could the future actually look like? Well, there are a few different models starting to pop up. Some places are trying transparent service charges that get distributed more fairly. Others are moving to a living wage model, where all the costs are just built into the price. And then you've got these hybrid systems.
a higher base wage for staff, plus a smaller, truly optional tip.
All of this really leaves us with one final big question to think about. As this tip fatigue keeps growing, and as more people on both sides of the transaction start looking for alternatives, are we actually watching the beginning of the end for this old and now very complicated tradition? The debate is definitely far from over.